My guest today is someone who has helped define modern consumer PR. Jo Carr started her career in Japan and Hong Kong before moving into agency life in London in the mid 90s. Over more than 3 decades, she's worked for. Jo Carr started her career in Japan and Hong Kong before moving into agency life in London in the mid 90s. Over more than 3 decades, she's worked at some of the UK's best known agencies, and in 2011 co-founded Hope&Glory with James Gordon McIntosh. From a fledgling agency with just a handful of clients, Hope&Glory has grown into a team of more than 90 and has become the UK's most awarded PR agency of the last 5 years, with campaigns for brands like IKEA, Uber, Sainsbury's, and my favourite, Pokemon, and many, many more. But the agency's accolades haven't just been for the work. Hope&Glory has also been recognised as one of the best places to work in PR. And along the way, Jo has been a tireless advocate for women and others from underrepresented communities, pushing to make the industry a fairer, more level playing field. She's now the president of Women PR, continuing to champion that change. And she's also debunked the myth that a career in consumer PR has to be over by the time you hit 50. Jo, welcome to Accidentally Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
You started, and I didn't know this, you started in Japan, which is my favorite place on earth, and Hong Kong before moving into agency life. Tell me about that. How did that happen?
Yeah, very good question. Well, I was in my final year at university and was trying to figure out what job do I do. And I quite like the idea of PR, but didn't almost feel ready to go into PR. I remember very distinctly, I had one interview. I got to the final round for a big agency network in London. And I came down, I was up in Birmingham studying, and I was wearing a really kind of ill-fitting suit. It was 1990. I looked so out of place. And I remember going along to that interview, and there were all these really impressive people who were in their kind of mid-20s. And I just felt like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for London. I'm not ready for this. So I thought, well, instead, I'll switch it up and I'll go to a completely different country. And I decided to go to Japan. And it was a great program actually called the Japanese Teaching English Teaching Program. I think it's still going, and it was very clever. They took people from the UK, Australia, US, and basically imported us to Japan, where we worked alongside teachers in the high school to try and improve the standard of English in Japan. So it's kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity. I was really lucky. I got stationed in Kyoto, which, if you know Japan, is the most ancient, beautiful city. I mean, I could have been at the top of Hokkaido, so I feel like that would have been good for my Japanese, but Kyoto was probably good for my soul in terms of where I ended up. And lived there for 2 years, and didn't do PR, did teaching, but taught me a lot in terms of dealing in another country, in another culture. And then I went from there to Hong Kong.
That was going to be my... Sorry, I was going to say that would be my next question. In terms of doing that, skills that, I focus a lot on soft skills, the things that you pick up and learn. What does that do for you? And can you see almost the repercussions of that now in your career?
I think it taught me a lot to. I think you had to read the room quite well. Like firstly you had to be quite resilient because you're going to somewhere completely different. I didn't speak the language. There were lots of cultural rituals I didn't understand. So I think it teaches you to sit back and properly try and absorb and listen and take it all in without jumping in with 2 feet, which I think is probably a very good skill, right? In communications and in PR, being able to observe, to be respectful of how people show up, trying to understand that. So I think that was probably quite helpful looking back. And perhaps just what's the word? Just perhaps waste, just waiting and before you jump in and thinking, well, this is all a bit weird, but I'm going to go with it and I'll see where it takes me. So it probably made me a bit braver and a bit more open to whatever gets thrown at me, because I from one day to the next I never quite knew what was going to happen to me in Japan,
Yeah.
and I loved it. I
Yeah.
absolutely loved it.
It is. It is. I've holidayed there only twice, and I just love every moment of it. Hong Kong, different. How does it differ?
Really different, really different. I remember landing in, at the time it was Kai Tak Airport, which was, I think it's now a different airport, and the noise, the buzz, the everything was much more vibrant. Japan was quite calm, quite subdued. Hong Kong, in comparison, felt like it was just very, very fast, very frenetic. At the time I was there, it was still a colony, so it was probably a bit different to maybe how it is today. But it gave me my first taste of working in the PR industry, and I managed to blag my way into my first PR job over there, which was I don't quite know how I managed that. Actually, when you look back and go, well, that was that was a stroke of luck that I managed to get myself a job.
What was that like? I mean, I would call that a moment of accidental brilliance. Those moments where you're not expecting something, but it's these things that shape you off in a different direction. What was it like working in Hong Kong?
I loved it. I managed to get some work experience in a PR agency, and again, it was a lot of shoe leather, knocking on doors, just trying to find a route in. These were the bad old days where you didn't get paid for an internship. So I remember those first 2 or 3 weeks, I had no money coming in. I was paying rent. I was teaching in the evenings just to kind of keep the wolf from the door. And then the place I was working, a role kind of somebody left basically, and I kind of just managed to kind of push myself forward and they took a bit of a punt on me because I didn't really have any experience. But I think that was Hong Kong all over back then. You didn't necessarily have to have the experience. You arrived, you showed willing. I think if you were halfway competent, you probably got given an opportunity. It was a great learning culture. I mean, I learned so much, and because people were always moving on, it was very, very transient. I think there were just jobs and opportunities there that I probably wouldn't have had necessarily if I'd come back to London and tried to get a job in London. I think it was, people were playing fast and loose. If you just jumped in, you volunteered to do things. People weren't saying, "Hey, hang on, you're only 23. Who do you think you are? Why are you trying to do that job?" So I think you just got a chance to try things that you wouldn't have got here.
I love that attitude. I love that openness and willingness to give it a try, and also not a fear of failure. I suppose there is internally, but we push it down. But a guest previously, Chris, talked about having an attitude and a focus of just say yes, and even if you get it wrong, at least you've given it a try, and it might be that thing that just does that to your life and sends you in a different way. And I love that.
Yeah,
I think
and
that's fantastic.
I look back, and I went to see a friend in Hong Kong who I'd met in Japan, and I gave myself 2 weeks, and I thought if I can find a role in 2 weeks, then I'll stay, and if I don't, and then I'll fly back to the UK and try my luck here. And I was just really fortunate that the right thing came up. And then I ended up staying there 3 years and then came to London in 1995. So I went away for a year. That's what I told my parents in 1990. Like, I'll see you in a year, mum and dad. And I ended up being away. I ended up being away for 5 years. But I look back on that time, and it was really, I think it gave me a lot of confidence. It gave me some resilience. And I'm a person who doesn't necessarily like change. I'm quite a creature of habit. So I had to kind of push myself outside of my normal confines to go and try something new. That was good.
How old were you at the time?
I was 21, I guess, straight after university.
That takes a lot of confidence to. It's interesting. Well, when you said, I wasn't ready for London, so I went to Japan. Like, London's often you think of Tokyo. Kyoto is different, but that takes a lot of confidence.
Yeah. But I think London, actually London at that time, and the PR scene in London was much more intimidating. I grew up in a provincial town. I went to state school. I was doing an English degree. I felt very much an outsider coming to that interview in London. Um, and I just thought, God, these are really grown up. These people are really streetwise and smart, and and they live in London. And I don't know. This isn't a world I know. I don't understand it. So weirdly, Japan, yeah, seemed like it might be a bit more
More
straightforward.
home. It's interesting. I joined the industry in 2010, and I grew up in a tiny little village in the West Midlands and went from there to London. And it was, rabbit in headlights moment in the PR scene, and words that I'd never heard before. It is a lot. Um, you've built a career in consumer that's lasted 33 years and counting, which to me I think is quite rare in consumer. Was there ever a moment where you kind of thought, I'm going to go off in a different direction, I'm going to go off here, or I'm going to was there ever a moment where you thought kind of essentially about walking away from it?
Not really. I mean, I'm surprised I'm still doing it in some ways. In that I remember being in my 20s and early 30s and looking around me, and not there weren't necessarily the role models then that maybe there are now in terms of senior women in the industry, and the ones that were there were all a bit terrifying. So I remember thinking, oh my goodness, if I cannot imagine myself working in consumer PR in my 50s. They're just I don't have big hair. I don't have big shoulder pads. I'm not going to fit in here. So I thought I wouldn't be in the industry for this long. But I love it. I absolutely love it. And I think starting Hope&Glory and working with James and the great team that I work with, every day, every day feels like a school day. Every day I'm learning something new. So I can't imagine doing anything else. And I think as an older woman, you do worry about, am I remaining relevant? Am I bringing, you know, insights to the table? Am I staying in touch with what's happening in culture? And you have to keep working at that. But on the whole, I can't imagine doing anything else
No,
really.
no. It, touching on the launch of Hope and Glory, what gave you the push? A lot of the people that I'm talking to in this series have started their own thing. What gave you that? This sounds like a bad question or a mean question. What gave you the confidence? Who did you think you were to kind of get up and go and launch in 2011?
I definitely think if I hadn't been working with James Wood in Macintosh, because then maybe I never would have done it. I mean, he definitely gave me the push in terms of he always knew. Like he probably grew up. He was probably in nappies and decided he wanted to run a consumer PR agency. Probably nappies and a cravat. Whereas I I didn't have that sense of, well, when I grow up I want to found or own an agency. That it wasn't particularly in my life plan. But I really loved working with him. I still really enjoy working with him, and I could see that we were a really good combination. We kind of complemented each other. We bring different skills to the party, and he probably made me feel braver than I would have been on my own. I don't think I would have done it on my own, actually. I think it's a tough gig, and I love having somebody else alongside me to do it with me. I don't know whether I would have been brave enough to be a sole MD or sole founder.
Do you mind me asking why you think that? Is there something that would have held you back? Is it in that moment and who you were? Because it's interesting because talking to Caroline in a previous episode, she talked about similar things. She launched Full Volume with her co-founder Rebecca, and they both have great skills, complementary skills. And that sounds like what you're saying with yourself and James. But what about you solo would stop you?
I think it's understand. I think it's that appreciation of, I know what I'm really good at and I know what I'm not great at. And I think being a business owner or being an MD of a PR agency, you're expected to do so much, from the people management through to the new business, through to the financials, through to the client management. And I just I'm not sure I had confidence that I had the breadth of skills. I know I'm good at some stuff, so it's not that I'm a shrinking
Right.
violet,
Yeah.
but I do. I don't think I would have enjoyed doing it all.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have liked the pressure, perhaps. I think I would have found it quite lonely.
Yeah.
I'm a naturally quite social person. So actually having somebody alongside me probably took the fear out of it.
There's camaraderie, kind of, you're
Yeah.
together in it. I'm with you.
Yeah, on a bad day, on a bad day, you've got somebody else you can say, "Oh my God, can you believe it?
Help.
What are we what are we doing? What on earth are we doing?" And I think I would have got into my own head too much if I'd just been on my own.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably completely bothers James. I mean, he's quite introverted. I'm quite extroverted, so he has to handle the whole stream of consciousness from me, kind of sharing my every thought on a topic. So it's probably very annoying, but I really value having a partner in crime.
It obviously works. Do you remember a moment, I suppose, in the early days where you almost realized that it was flying, it was going to fly? Did you remember a key moment in time?
Yeah, I think actually there were a couple of things. It was one. I think the biggest adjustment before we got to that point was realizing that we could make decisions, and like they were our decisions, and we could just do it. I think that for the first 3 to 5 months, I was constantly looking over my shoulder because I'd always worked in bigger groups, thinking, "Oh, I need to ask somebody to commission. I need to check that. I need to talk to that stakeholder." And I remember James saying to me, "Joe, like we can agree something, and then we can just do it." And I'm like, "Oh no, that can't be right. Surely I need to tell somebody what I'm up to." And then once I got through that, I think the highs were things like winning O2, Virgin Media O2 as it is now, as a client, and thinking, "Oh, actually that's quite a big client." And then winning IKEA in early 2013 again was a defining moment of, "Oh my goodness, that's another big brand that can see something in us that maybe we can't even see yet in ourselves," which is that we're quite good. Like we know, we've never tried to be, very alternative or different, but we are, I think, we were good practitioners. We had good ideas. We knew how to deliver them. And when clients buy into that, you have that moment of thinking, "Oh, actually, maybe we've got something here." You know, and actually, and also just when you have people in the team and you're suddenly no longer a team of two, but you might be a team of 5 or 6, and then you can see the talent in that room and knowing they're excited about working with these clients, and you get your first idea out the door, and then you think, "Oh yeah, okay, maybe we're onto something."
That building of momentum, things happening,
Yeah.
and yeah, I see it. You have built a incredible reputation for creativity, stunts, great delivery, but also being a brilliant place to work. How do you balance, the creativity stunt side of things is takes a lot. It takes a lot to deliver. How do you balance getting that and people kind of in that perfect position?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I think we talk a lot about being sort of a high challenge but high support culture. So we know our team, and and this is true, I think, of me and James, that we want to be pushed, we want to try new things, we want to feel like we're doing really good work, but you want to know you're doing that with people around you who are there to help, to pick you up if things aren't going right. You want to know that you've got people on your side, and that's always been really important. And so for me, trying to strike that balance, and it's a bit of a tightrope of making sure that we're allowing people to do what I'd like to think is career defining work, that when they leave they can say, "Well, when I was at Hope&Glory, I did that campaign for Uber, I did that campaign for IKEA," but can also say, "I was looked after, I didn't burn out. There was the policies, the practices, everything in place to make sure that I thrived, and I wasn't purely just kind of surviving." Because I think there are too many agencies out there that, can become, toxic, unpleasant, not safe places to work. And I don't, that's never where we would want to be. Equally, I think there's some beautiful, lovely places out there where I think it'd be great to work, but they don't always necessarily get great work out the door. So it's trying to get that right kind of push pull thing going on, where you're pushing for great work, but you're also looking after people along the way.
It is a real challenge, and it's a real difficult area to balance and to get right. One starts to take a dip, and you'll face the challenges a bit further down the line. It, you've also been really vocal about leveling up opportunities for women and for marginalized groups within PR. What in your tenure, in your period in PR, what changes have you seen, and what do you think still needs to happen?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more. I mean, I think there are now um, more senior women in like running agencies, which is great. I think hopefully well, do you know what? I'd like to think we're holding on to talent, but then at the same time, there were studies out in 2025 that told us that, women are still missing from the industry. There's still an imbalance. There are still more men in senior roles. Men only make up a third of the industry, but they're often in like they occupy over half of the senior roles. So we're obviously not getting it right. But I do think there has been progress. And I think actually a recognition that it's not a linear thing. And success comes in many different ways and different forms. And I think women are particularly resilient and also innovative at deciding actually what will work for them. And it may be they found their own thing. It may be that they go freelance. It might be they will change the model um, rather than fight the system, if that makes sense, which I think is encouraging. Um, what else has happened? Um, I I think COVID in some ways helped. I mean that's a very weird thing to say, but I think flexible working remotely, um, putting more emphasis on home and family. I think that became the norm. I think that probably helped level things up a bit. You don't have to be in London or Manchester or another big city to be working in PR. So that's been really. I think that's probably helped our cause.
I think,
But I
yeah.
say all of that. I still feel there's a lot to do. There's
What
still a lot to do.
what do you think? What do you think we need to? I'm speaking here as a 36-year-old man. I run an agency. What do we need to be? What do men in our sector need to be doing better?
Yeah, no, I think I think it's allyship. I think it's looking around, at the business you're building and looking at who's at the top table and thinking what perspectives might you be missing, and inviting people in and inviting views in. I'm sure you're already doing it. I think a lot of the people in the industry that I work with are really open to wanting to make it a better, more equitable industry. So I think the intention is there, but I think we have to be quite deliberate in our actions. And actually, and I mean, I've noticed it over the years where I might get invited to be on a panel or speak at an event, and then I've become a lot pushier and saying, well, who else is going to be there? Who else have you invited? Tell me about that, because if then there's a chance to say, well, actually, I think you're missing some great people. Why don't you talk to this person? Why don't you bring that person in? So I think it's constantly thinking, who else should be here? Who am I missing?
I think that's a real great shout, and it's certainly not something I've considered in that moment. When you do have that platform in a way, how do you spread that platform and bring people? That's great. Yeah, I think,
Yeah. How do you share it? And I
yeah.
and I'm not. This is I'm probably later. I wish I'd got to this point earlier. I mean, I'm sure I could have done a lot more earlier in my career. But that sense of, well, it's brilliant that I've been invited to do this, but who else could do it alongside me? Who should be. Who's a better expert in some of the things that I might get asked to do, and let me just pass that on.
Yeah.
I don't have to do every opportunity. There are other people who could do it.
In my research, you shared in some of the prep of this, being in consumer PR in your 50s. We talked a moment ago about not necessarily expecting to do that. I- I- Challenging the the industry for women, for marginalized communities, but also from an age perspective. What advice would you give to people? Advice, guidance would you give to people who are perhaps thinking, I there's a limit on when I shouldn't be doing something?
Yeah, we always talk about, experience shouldn't have an expiry date. Like there's some very talented people, right, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And just because they've had another birthday, I mean, we should be celebrating they've had another birthday, right? We shouldn't be saying, "Oh, well, that's one," that's not helpful. And I think ageism is probably one of the areas that has been rather overlooked when we've looked at how do we level up, um, how do we level up the industry? And I'd encourage employers, and we've done this at Hope&Glory as well, is make sure that we've also got policies around ageism, because I think we're quite good at thinking about gender, through the lens of ethnicity and race, through the lens maybe of sexuality, but have we really thought about age? And are we making sure that we are bringing in all sorts of perspectives? Because you'll get a different view on a problem from a 50-year-old as you will from a 20-year-old, and they're both valid. And you're going to get briefs from clients that might want to speak to a 40-something, 50-something audience. And actually, if you've only got a brainstorm room, if you've only got a room of 20-year-olds, they're going to struggle with that. So I think it's about knowing that our clients want diverse thought from us, that we need to make sure that we have a team that reflects that.
I completely agree. You want as many different perspectives. An episode earlier with Daniel Cohen, we talked about brainstorms and the challenge of brainstorms. Very often they can be a situation where someone already has an idea and they're just they're almost sense checking the idea against lots of different people. And actually, what you really want is things that are just completely off the wall that you can build on, and that might come from somebody regardless of their age. And it's sort of bonkers that we have that. And I agree, it's that part of inclusion that we don't really think about.
Yeah, and also when you think about great ideas, they normally come from a really brilliant insight. And, insights obviously can come when you're in your teens and your 20s, but sometimes you need to live a bit of life, right? to kind of think, oh, actually, hang on a minute, I've been here, I've done, I've experienced that, I know how that audience is feeling. So I think it's at our peril if we dismiss insights and thoughts and ideas from people who are perhaps midlife or beyond. I think we're missing a trick.
Yeah. What not to drill necessarily into policy, but what do you think we as an industry could be doing better when it comes to that?
In terms of age and
Ageism.
ageism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is about making sure that we're measuring it. Um, yeah, as I said earlier, I'm not sure that many agencies have a age-related policy, so I think that's the first thing. I think actually having role models. I mean, we did it at Women in PR did a 40 over 40 list this year of women in their 40s. And again, sometimes women particularly, and I'm sure it's true of men too, but I think women, it's more acutely felt. They feel they become more invisible. So when they go into their 40s and their 50s, they're not noticed as much. They're not talked about as much. So making sure that we are creating opportunities, that we're, platforming, heroing women who are doing really interesting things later in life. I think that, I think you have to see it. We have to champion diverse talent in all its forms. And I think that's really important as well. So I think as an industry, not always looking for the voice of youth, but also looking for the voice of experience when you're doing an op-ed or when you're putting together a panel or a report. I think that's quite important.
Yeah. What is something about the work you do, consumer PR, that outsiders never quite understand until they are you and they've lived it? What are some of the big things that are just misunderstandings?
I think firstly, people think we eat a lot of lunch. I don't know. I don't know about you.
Do you not?
I don't know when I last had a lunch. Like a proper. I mean, maybe I might be lucky and get breakfast. But I think there is this image that if you're in consumer PR, you're out, whining, dining, never quite actually doing any work. I think that is a myth that needs to be debunked. I think we all work very hard. What else? I think there's a lot of the devil's in the detail. Like you see these big ideas, don't you? And you think, wow, amazing. But so much of so much of our time and energy will go into making sure we've got the detail right. And so I always think consumer PRs tend to be very, very organized people because they have to. I mean, I think it's true of anybody probably in our profession, but you can't leave a stone unturned. You need to know that you've thought through every contingency, right? And I think that actually that in some ways I quite like that about our career and our industry, that you have to learn to look around corners and you have to think, well, where's the thing that's going to trip me up? Either reputationally because we haven't thought it through, or if you're doing a big event or a stunt, what's the thing we haven't thought about? What's the unintended consequence of doing what we're doing? So that's exciting. That keeps you on your toes, I think.
It does. Kate Hartley earlier was talking about, it's obviously focusing from a crisis point of view, and almost an unintended consequence of doing that is you almost think at every stage the crisis scenarios that will come out of things just in daily life. And it's true. A friend of mine was planning her wedding and was talking through all the things, and I didn't want to be mean, but I was like, I could do that in 20 minutes. Give me a phone and I'll get that sorted. Because we have to do that. We have to think through all of those things. You have to, point through. And I think we'd make, if PR doesn't work out for us, Joe, we can go and be wedding planners. We'll ace it.
Oh, it would be so straightforward, wouldn't it? We'd be really good at it. And I think the curiosity is the other thing. I think that's a skill that's underrated, and yeah, it's a big part of what you do in consumer PR. Like you need to be curious about, what would happen if I did this, and what if I just picked up the phone to that person? What's the worst they can do? They're probably, they could say no, but fine. I'll kind of do that, and I'll move on. And I think that mixture of being curious but also being brave is a big part of what we do as well.
I love that. I've had the term accidentally brilliant in my head for some time. It's a phrase that I use in the sense of, you don't know that you're brilliant at something until you've done it. And actually, even if you're not good at it, it's fine. Because and a bit like what you've just said in terms of, if they just say no, well, that's fine. But actually, once you start making those connections, those moments of accidental brilliance come through, and suddenly you've created something that is brilliant. and that matters.
And I think, the word connection is really important as well. I think we're in an industry where actually I'm a big fan of, reach out, talk to people, ask people things. You never know where it's going to take you. And in that respect, I think we're very lucky in the industry that we work in, that people are normally open to taking a call, having a conversation, being up for, exploring something. So I think that's really good too.
What is a thread that runs through your career? What's Joe brought to every situation and scenario?
Oh, I don't know. What have I brought? Hopefully, I'd like to think I brought a degree of calm. I mean, I don't feel calm. I mean, I really don't feel calm. Most of the time, I feel pretty frantic and a little bit anxious about things. But I think I've managed to flip that into, if you're with me and you're a client or a member of my team, I think they would probably say that I bring an aura of calm, and in a sense that it'll be all right. It will all be all right, which inevitably it is, right? Yeah, 9 times out of 10.
Not always.
Fine,
yeah, not always. Sometimes.
Yeah. What else have I brought? Hopefully an element of fun, and I don't mean kind of uproarious, wild fun, because I'm probably not. I'm not wild, but I'd like to think that I don't take things too seriously, and that it's a big part of Hope and Glory that we talk about, take the work seriously but not yourself. And I think it's really important to be able to laugh at yourself, be, have a lightness of touch, not worry. I cannot see the point of getting angry and mad about things in work. I'm sure there are global events that make me mad, but generally, when I'm in a work environment, we will all make mistakes. They happen. Let's not dwell on that. Let's just dwell on fixing it. I love that phrase. To err is human and to recover is divine. Like we will all make a mistake, but actually, how you handle that in the moment, how you deal with the people in the moment, is much more defining than anything else that you will do. So for me, that's quite important. And you've heard the stories that we worked in this industry long enough that people tell you, they've had things thrown at them, they've been shouted at, there've been tantrums, and I just can't, I can't get my
It's
bizarre. Head around that. I'm like, what? Why would you do that?
It's bizarre, and when you see it, you just think, what is it? What's going on? What's happened? Yeah,
we're not toddlers, are we? We don't have to have tantrums. But I don't know what else I brought really. I think probably a mixture of that, relatively calm, and hopefully just a lightness of touch. I think that's important.
I feel calmer from this chat, so I think you do. I do. I feel like I feel.
No, you don't.
If you could go back to just before you were about to make that decision about going to Japan or London, what advice would you give to yourself?
I think I would say to myself, don't overthink it. Like put one foot in front of the other, and it's remarkable where you'll end up. I think there's no point having prejudging it or trying to have a very set view or path. Just take the chance, start the journey, and then it's never too late. If you want to pivot or change, or you can, right? I think sometimes people, the very act of doing something is so paralyzing that you don't do it. And actually, just the first, all you have to do is do one action, and then do the next action, and then do the next one after that.
And you might be amazing at it. That thing.
Yeah, and if you're not, then you just take a step in the other direction. Otherwise, I think you would never. When I look back, I was very keen to leave my hometown and go to university, and no one in my family had been to university before, and I just remember thinking that's quite a big step. But you just do that step, and then the next thing is, you end up on a plane to Japan, which again I probably wouldn't have predicted I would have done. So I think you just take the opportunities when they come. Don't overthink where they're going to take you. Try it, and it's never too late to change your mind, I don't think.
And that brings me on nicely. Finally, Jo, what makes you feel in your day-to-day accidentally brilliant?
I think my problem is I don't feel brilliant. I mean, I do love the title of this podcast. I feel accidental. Do you know what I mean? I out of those two words, I can really resonate with the accidental bit rather than the brilliant bit. But what would I think? The bit that gives me energy actually day to day is the people. I love going into the office. I love being surrounded by the team. They make me feel like anything is possible. Any deadline, any idea, like between us, we'll crack it. And I think I stand on the shoulders of giants. I might be the founder of Hope&Glory, and it might be my name sometimes that gets sort of put forward as Hope&Glory Jo Carr, but actually I'm just one person, and it's the people that I work with that give me so much joy. I can't begin to tell you. They are the reason I get out of bed in the morning, and I love working with them. And I'm just delighted that we have collectively had the success that we've had, because it's down to them, not me. So that's maybe what for me what accidentally brilliant means. But yes, I took a punt on opening an agency with James, and it could have gone horribly wrong. But the people that make it brilliant day in day out are the 90 people that we work alongside.
It's it's the taking the risk, taking the challenge, and then
Mm.
I hate to say it. Well, obviously the word doesn't necessarily link up in you, but to be Hope and Glory, pretty brilliant. So if the risk paid off, I would say it's definitely up there. Joe, thank you so
Well,
much.
oh, you're very welcome. Actually, made me think. I mean, there's a reason why we're called Hope and Glory, and people often say, "Who's Hope? Who's Glory?" And I'm probably Hope, and James is Glory, which is why I think I struggle sometimes with words like brilliant and glory, because I'm probably the person who's thinking, I am the hope. Yeah, mate, I'm probably the hope.
I've never thought of it that way, but I it's such a nice title because nice name. Sorry, it's such a nice brand name in the sense that a lot of the work we do is based in hope, and then if it works, it's
Oh
based in
yeah, oh
glory.
my goodness, yeah. We live in hope of glory. I mean, that's it, really. We live in hope of glory.
Brilliant, Joe. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.